The DNA test results were sitting in front of my husband, and he looked at me like I was a complete stranger. His wealthy mother stood beside him with her arms folded tightly across her chest, watching me like she had already won. Then my husband finally said the words that destroyed my entire world. "You trapped me with another man's baby." The room went silent. I felt my heartbeat pounding inside my ears. Not because I was guilty, but because I suddenly realized something terrifying. The people I trusted most had already decided I was disposable. And they had no idea. Their perfect rich family empire was only days away from complete destruction. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 31 years old. And before I met Ethan Sinclair, my life was very ordinary. I grew up in a tiny apartment above a laundromat in Milwaukee. My mother worked double shifts at a diner almost every day of her life. She used to come home smelling like coffee and fryer grease, completely exhausted, but still smiling at me like everything was okay. We never had money. Sometimes the electricity got shut off. Sometimes we ate canned soup for 3 days straight. But my mother always told me one thing: never let rich people make you feel small. At the time, I didn't understand why she said that so often. Then I met Ethan. I met Ethan during my second year working in Chicago. I was waitressing at a rooftop restaurant downtown while finishing graduate school. And Ethan walked in wearing a navy suit worth more than my monthly rent. At first I assumed he was arrogant. Rich men usually were. But he surprised me. He remembered my name. He tipped generously. He asked about my dreams instead of talking about himself. And over time, I fell completely in love with him. Not because he was rich, but because he made me feel safe, seen, important. For the Sinclairs weren't just wealthy. They were the kind of rich that believed money made them genetically superior. Country clubs, private schools, luxury charity events, political connections. Their mansion looked less like a house and more like a museum. And his mother, Victoria Sinclair, treated me like dirt from the moment we met. The first thing she ever said to me was, "So you're the waitress?" Not hello. Not nice to meet you. Just, "So you're the waitress?" And Ethan laughed nervously instead of defending me. That should have been my first warning. At first, Victoria's cruelty was subtle. Tiny comments disguised as jokes. "Emily probably isn't used to wine like this. Do your people normally vacation outside the country? You're surprisingly polished for your background." Every dinner felt like an interview I was failing. But Ethan always begged me to ignore her. That's just how she is. And because I loved him, I stayed quiet. I convinced myself things would improve after marriage. But marriage didn't fix anything. It made everything worse. The first major humiliation happened during our engagement party. Over 200 people attended. Business executives, investors, local politicians. I remember feeling nervous but excited. Until Victoria grabbed the microphone. She smiled at the crowd and said, "Ethan has always had a habit of rescuing broken things." Everyone laughed politely. Then she looked directly at me. "But thankfully Emily cleans up beautifully." The room exploded into awkward laughter. And I stood there smiling while my face burned with humiliation. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. But he still said nothing. Again. Nothing. Everything changed when I got pregnant. At first Ethan was overjoyed. He cried during our ultrasound appointment. He kissed my stomach every night. He spent hours researching baby names online. For a while, I thought maybe this baby would finally unite the family. I was wrong. Because the moment Victoria found out, she became obsessed. Not with the baby. With control. She started asking strange questions constantly. "When exactly did you conceive? Was Ethan traveling that week? You two were fighting around that time, right?" At first I ignored it. Then she began contacting my doctor's office. She questioned nurses. She asked about appointment dates. That's when fear started creeping into my stomach. This wasn't normal behavior. This was obsession. And deep down, I think she already planned to destroy me. The worst part wasn't Victoria. It was watching Ethan slowly change. At first he defended me. Then he became quieter. More distant. More suspicious. He stopped touching my stomach. Stop talking about baby names. Stop looking excited. Some nights he barely spoke to me at all. And one night, I caught him staring at me while I slept, like he didn't recognize me anymore. That look broke my heart more than anything his mother ever said. That's why I secretly took a prenatal DNA test weeks before the disaster dinner. Not because I doubted Ethan. Because I needed protection. I needed proof. And when the results came back, they confirmed exactly what I already knew. Ethan was the father. 100%. I cried in relief. But I made one huge mistake. I kept the results hidden. Because part of me still hoped this family could heal. I had no idea how cruel they were about to become. The dinner happened on a cold Friday night in November. 12 people sat around a massive marble dining table. Everything looked perfect on the outside. Crystal glasses, designer dresses, expensive candles, fake smiles. I remember feeling nauseous from pregnancy exhaustion. Then Victoria tapped her fork against her glass. The room became silent instantly. She smiled elegantly and said, "Before this family welcomes a new Sinclair heir." My stomach tightened immediately. Perhaps we should confirm the child actually belongs to Ethan. Complete silence. I felt the blood drain from my face. Then slowly, all eyes turned toward me. I looked at Ethan desperately, waiting for him to shut it down. Instead, he quietly said, "If the baby is mine, the test shouldn't upset you." That sentence destroyed me. One investor awkwardly laughed. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Victoria calmly sipped wine while watching me suffer. And suddenly I realized something horrifying. This wasn't spontaneous. They planned this. They invited witnesses intentionally. They wanted maximum humiliation. I felt tears burning my eyes. But I refused to cry in front of them. So I stood up quietly and said, "You'll get your DNA test." Then I walked out of the room while his family stared at me like I was trash. I locked myself inside our bedroom for hours. Downstairs, I could hear laughter again. Normal conversation. Glasses clinking. Like my humiliation was entertainment. Around midnight, Ethan entered carefully. He looked exhausted. But not guilty. Just uncomfortable. "Emily," he whispered. "Please understand. My family just wants certainty." I stared at him in disbelief. "Your family thinks I cheated on you." He rubbed his forehead. "That night I called my mother crying. And after listening quietly, she finally said, 'Rich people only respect power.'" I sat silently holding the phone. Then she added, "You stop being their victim the moment you stop fearing them." That sentence changed everything. Because for the first time, I stopped trying to save the marriage and started thinking about survival, then revenge. The next morning, Victoria invited me to brunch. Like she hadn't publicly destroyed me less than 12 hours earlier. She wore white designer clothing and expensive diamonds. Perfect image. Perfect posture. Perfect monster. Halfway through brunch, she leaned closer and whispered, "If the child isn't Ethan's, disappearing quietly would protect everyone." Everyone. Not me. Not the baby. The family reputation. That's all she cared about. And suddenly, I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. So I smiled softly and lied. "You're right," I told her. "I think Ethan deserves the full truth." Her eyes lit up instantly. She thought I was surrendering. But I had already started planning her destruction. 3 years earlier, before the wedding, Richard Sinclair got drunk during a charity gala. And he confessed something shocking. Victoria cheated on him for years. At the time I thought he was exaggerating. But suddenly, everything clicked into place. Her obsession with bloodlines, DNA, inheritance, control. She wasn't protecting Ethan. She was protecting herself. And I realized exactly how to destroy her world. 1 week later, the Sinclairs hosted their annual charity gala. Hundreds attended. Local celebrities, investors, news reporters, politicians. Victoria loved public attention. Because wealthy people survive through image. And I planned to destroy hers publicly. The room immediately fell silent. Victoria's smile disappeared instantly. "Emily," she hissed quietly, "what are you doing?" I looked calmly at the audience. then raised the DNA envelope into the air. And Ethan's face went completely pale. I took the DNA test, I announced. And Ethan is the father. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Victoria looked frozen. But I wasn't finished. I slowly turned toward Richard. Then I pulled out a second envelope. While we're discussing bloodlines, complete silence. One person in this family may not actually be a Sinclair. Victoria stopped breathing. Ethan frowned in confusion. Richard stared at me in shock. And I calmly said, maybe Ethan should take a DNA test too. The room exploded. Victoria screamed at me to leave. Investors stared in horror. Phones came out instantly. People started recording. Ethan demanded answers. Richard looked physically sick. Then suddenly, Victoria slapped me across the face. The sound echoed through the ballroom. Everyone gasped. But I smiled. Because the moment she hit me, she lost. Publicly. Permanently. 3 days later, Ethan received the results. Richard was not his biological father. Victoria's affair had stayed hidden for 34 years. Until me. The scandal exploded online. News blogs covered it. Investors panicked. The charity board removed Victoria immediately. People who once worshipped her suddenly disappeared. That's the thing about rich society. Loyalty only exists while power remains. A week later, Ethan showed up at my apartment crying. Not angry. Broken. I'm sorry, he whispered. I let her poison me against you. I held my newborn daughter quietly while he cried. And honestly, part of me still loved him. But another part remembered that dinner table. 6 months later, I bought a peaceful house near the lake for me and my daughter. No mansión. No fake luxury. No poisonous family dinners. Just peace. Victoria disappeared from public life completely. Richard filed for divorce. And Ethan still writes letters begging for another chance. Sometimes, I think about that dinner table. The moment they tried to destroy me publicly. What they never understood was that humiliation changes people, especially women who spent their entire lives surviving. Because once you stop fearing powerful people, they lose control forever. And sometimes karma arrives quietly, wearing high heels, and carrying DNA results. If this story shocked you, subscribe to Storytales USA for more emotional betrayal stories, revenge dramas, shocking family secrets, and cinematic storytelling experiences. And tell me honestly in the comments, would you forgive Ethan after everything he did?